Hi guys, this is Roger with Startup Work, and today's session is to introduce the Juumin platform, which is designed to help international founders incorporate quickly and smoothly. The goals of this session includes reviewing the preparations that go into company incorporation, the common timelines associated with the incorporation process, and finally seeing how Juumin is able to accelerate you through those processes. We'll be starting first with understanding the expected timeline and then covering the specific forms involved in incorporation. These are the general steps that everyone talks about when it comes to incorporation: notarization, transfer of capital, company registration, and registration at the Tax and Pension Office, which can take about a month, but in reality, there are actually a lot more details involved in each of the steps, including before and after, which can take much longer than a month total. When it comes to the articles of incorporation, the rule book of the company, if you're a single founder, it's not so hard. You decide all the details, then you take it away to get notarized and so forth. With several founders, however, the timeline slows down as things get more complicated and there are more details to agree on. Including drafting the articles and preparing the items listed here, the entire process from the beginning to end could actually take up to half a year. So now you're wondering, that's a long time. Are there tricks to make it go faster? And the answer is yes. We have three specific points that we will cover in detail shortly. Let's go back a bit and talk more in detail about the preparation phase that happens before notarization. What you need are three things: stamps, both personal and company, which is the equivalent of the more commonly used signature, the stamp certificate for your personal stamp to give it legal power, and finally, although optional but still good to have in the long run, the My Number card, which is the equivalent of a social security card. The general amount of time it takes to get each of the items also vary. The stamps can be customized and ordered within a day or two, or up to 1 week max, depending on how many you're ordering and factoring possible delays. The stamp certificate registration only takes a single day at the city office, and while you're there, you could also pick up a copy of the certificate of residence, which is used in most registration processes in Japan. And the My Number card will take the longest, up to 1 to 2 months to issue after you officially register. So let's talk a little bit about the stamps that you'll need. For the personal stamp, there are some forms that may not be accepted. In general, as you can see, the stamp must include your legal first and or last name on it somewhere. Initials, middle names, and nicknames will not be accepted. There's three types of different company stamps, but we'll only talk about two because the third is optional and has no legal power. One is the primary representative stamp, used for all official company dealings and documents. The other is a smaller bank stamp, used mostly for statements and dealings with financial institutions. Once you have the personal stamps ordered and in hand, you're ready to visit the city office to get it registered. It's just a simple form, and it does not take much time to fill it out and turn in. If you don't have this Hanko certificate yet, the keyword being yet, you can substitute it with a signature certificate from the embassy, but this will cost you extra time and money, so it's actually well worth your time to just get the personal stamp certificate. Lastly, the My Number card. The My Number card is very versatile because not only does it act as a form of ID, it also allows you to access more convenient features. Electronic tax filing is only available to those who have a My Number card, and if you need other official certificates, like more copies of the certificate of residence or tax filing certificates, you can get them just by walking into a convenience store to print them out instead of going to the city office. Putting all of this together, we can see that this can easily take longer than a month. Getting the stamp and stamp certificates are short, but applying for the My Number card will be the bottleneck. On top of that, you actually need to apply for a personal bank account, which could take up to another month. Why do you need one? Because you actually need to transfer capital into Japan prior to company registration. And so, especially if you're in a hurry, let's talk about some strategies and how Juumin can accelerate you through the incorporation process. You can actually skip processes by finding alternatives. For example, the My Number card is nice, but it's not necessary immediately. You can postpone this to a later stage, and now without the My Number card, you can actually even skip applying for your own personal bank account. What's not so commonly known is that while you need to transfer the capital into a Japanese bank account, it doesn't necessarily have to be your bank account. With a certificate of entitlement to payment, you can borrow someone else's account, of course, someone ideally that you can trust, to move the money physically to Japan. After this transfer is made, you just need to make sure that you have all the confirmation and details to prove the transaction happened and the money is yours for the purpose of company incorporation. Now moving on into the rulebook, the articles of incorporation that will require decisions to be made prior to drafting. There are specific details that must be communicated on the articles of incorporation. You'll need to decide on your company name, list out clearly your company's objectives and business purposes, your company's address, and also decide the total number of shares that can be issued. You'll also need to designate a promoter, aka the person who will physically go through the incorporation process and put capital into the company, any and all directors who will manage the company, other shareholders in addition to the promoter, initial shares to issue to all these shareholders, the total capital to start with, and the declaration of fiscal year. For example, a fiscal year ending in March means that your fiscal year will be from April to March. Some definitions regarding team members that you must decide. The promoter, again, is the person that incorporates the company and is required to put in some capital and receive shares in return. Directors will be mainly responsible for managing the company. They do not have to hold shares, but they can. So more visually, we can see the relationship between these three terms. During incorporation, the promoter is involved, but once incorporation is completed, the promoter is just another shareholder. So to sum up, how does Juumin help you with the articles of incorporation? All of the details that we just covered that are collected through a simple form filling on the platform, Juumin will take all of these inputs and organize it into a standardized, recognized articles of incorporation in both English and Japanese. Deciding some of these incorporation details is hard enough, and Juumin is here to automatically generate the full document so that you don't have to write it out yourself from scratch. Next, let's talk about the notarization process. The actual act of notarization only takes 1 day at the notary office, but there are other pre-steps involved to get there. Normally, you'll have to first book an appointment, install a few software electronically, submit the articles initially electronically for review, go back and forth with the notary officer for revision, rescinding, finalizing, etc. As you can imagine, this can be quite hard when you may also not be well versed in Japanese, but again, after completing the articles of incorporation through Juumin, Juumin can facilitate this process, allowing you to skip booking directly with the notary office and contact them repeatedly yourself, skip the software installation and review process, so that all you personally will need to do is just go to the notary office when it's ready and bring the following items for official notarization. Once your notarization is complete, you'll be ready to transfer your capital to Japan. And like we previously mentioned during the discussion that this step is possible even without your personal bank account, make sure that you have adequate confirmation and records of the transfer. Specifically, how much is transferred, which date the transfer was completed, who it came from, which should be you, the promoter, and the founder. Now we finally arrive at the actual company registration, where Juumin will provide you the final forms required for incorporation. In addition to generating the articles of incorporation, official company registration application forms will also be created based on the information you provide. So that when you finally go to the Legal Affairs Bureau, you will need to bring the company registration documents created by Juumin, your capital transfer record, plus the certificate of entitlement to payment if you're borrowing a bank account, your company stamp, personal stamps of all involved directors, 150,000 yen in cash because other forms of payment are not accepted, and lastly, your notarized articles of incorporation. Juumin's still in development, but it doesn't stop with just company incorporation. In the future, Juumin will also be able to handle visa applications for new visas, change of status, or extensions, and also be available to handle post-incorporation procedures such as company registration at the tax office and social labor insurance registration at the pension office. Stay tuned for more and let Juumin become the new standard for your company incorporation needs. Thank you for your time.